Rattlesnakes are a source of fascination, but also a source of fear. We visited Nk'Mip Desert Cultural Centre recently for World Snake Day, where Loki the Rattler was on display.
So yes, this is Loki, our beautiful rattlesnake here.
A recent poll of British Columbians by Insights West found that snakes are the second greatest source of fear after terrorism and tied with heights, ahead of nuclear war and even ahead of death.
40% of all people scared of snakes interviewed by this poll. So we've got people here being the victim of crime and death. So I think that's astonishing. There are people out there who are laughing in the face of death, but a snake comes along, they're out of there. See you later. They can't deal with it.
Jared Maida is a snake biologist leading the snake research program at Nk'Mip. He's studying the impact of development on rattlers. We asked him if snakes are something to be feared.
Snakes are something to respect. And they are dangerous. Rattlesnakes are dangerous. They're venomous. They pose a threat to us. But understanding their behavior and understanding their ecology, we don't need to fear them like we do, say, terrorism. You leave the snakes alone and the snakes are going to leave you alone. They don't want anything to do with you. Probably, a person scared of a snake, I guarantee that snake is way more scared of that person. So you just leave the snakes alone and they'll leave you alone. Everyone knows snakes are feared by almost everyone. Snakes in general, and not just rattlesnakes, but rattlesnakes, I guess for obvious reasons, are probably one of the most misunderstood and maligned creatures on this planet, okay? People have this Hollywood idea of rattlesnakes being ferocious and they'll come out of the bushes to attack you, and that's, furthest from the truth. The amount of times that Cole and I or Cody have to jump into brush to catch a snake way outweighs the amount of times where we just walk up to it and pick it up because it's being defensive. Rattlesnakes don't want anything to do with you. And a lot of people, think about the fangs and the rattle and, them being dangerous, and that's their biggest defense mechanism. And that's untrue as well. Their best defense mechanism is that they're incredibly quiet and they're highly camouflaged. They're very cryptic. They're impossible to see. There's times where, we'll be looking at a spot and, no rattlesnakes here, and then one moves and it's 2.5 feet in front of you in the open.
Yet the sound of rattling is something many people fear. What causes it?
Something inside the rattle, these segments are made of keratin, which is the same as our fingernails. So they kind of have this columnar structure in the middle and then these rings that wrap around that piece. And so the sound is created from the rattles banging against each other. So that's all it is. They're just hitting against each other.
And they're very quiet animals. I tell people that rattlesnakes are incredibly docile and quiet, and people are kind of confused because they associate with the rattle. And yeah, the rattle is very loud and striking, but besides that, they don't just rattle. They don't communicate by rattling. Rattling is used as a defensive scare mechanism. And really the only time they rattle, and when it's effective, is when they want you or a predator to kind of freeze and be stunned. And that's usually what they do. And so typically a rattlesnake, if it sees or hears something or feels something coming, they're going to hunker and just lay low and try to blend in.
Of course, western rattlesnakes are one of the few venomous snakes in Canada, but these are not like some snakes elsewhere in the world that can kill a person in minutes.
So our snakes, as far as venom potency, is very low. The risk of death, especially nowadays with the new anti-serum that we have, is fairly low.
The main purpose of venom in rattlesnakes is for the killing and digestion of prey. So when a rattlesnake bites an animal, the venom is injected. Depending on the size of the animal, it's going to drop quite quickly. And this venom is slowly working away. It's eating away at the tissues inside that animal.
One of the main goals of the Snake Research Project is to study the migration of rattlesnakes throughout the year. Snakes have a pit tag implanted to identify them, and they also have a radio transmitter surgically implanted. By moving around an antenna to point in the direction of their signal, it's possible to locate them through triangulation.
Snakes are migratory animals, and you think of migratory animals, you think of birds flying from Mexico up to Alaska, you think of the wildebeest in Africa, but snakes are a migratory animal just on a much smaller scale. And we've identified approximately 30 to 35 dens here in the southern portion of the Osoyoos Indian Band land. And what we know is that these rattlesnakes will leave their dens and do directional straight line movements, either down into the valley or up into the mountains. And so they have this essentially internal compass. They know where they're going. They're a small animal, but they still can travel 5, 6, 7 kilometers away from their den.
The Snake Research Project is now in its 13th year. When Spirit Ridge and Nk'Mip were first developed, many snakes were found and had to be relocated.
So if you relocate a snake, from your yard or from the, cultural center parking lot, and you take it too far, it's going to become confused and not know where it is, and might not be able to get back to its den or find a den. So what we do for translocation, we tell people, try not to move a snake greater than 1 kilometer away from where it was found, and that's the absolute extreme. The best scenario is as close possible to where it's both safe and beneficial for the snake and for us.
So why is it even important to study snakes?
So snakes are, an important component of the ecosystem here in British Columbia. They're a top predator, for mice, voles, and other small mammals, but they also get predated on larger animals, so birds of prey like osprey or eagles and hawks. Other species at risk like badgers, bears, coyotes, etc. So they're that key component between the small animals and the larger animals. And also, rattlesnakes are a good biocontrol agent for mice and voles. They keep mice and vole populations at check. And here in the Okanagan, that can be critically important for our huge winery and orchard industry, where unchecked small mammal population like voles and mice can lead to some serious economic consequences for our crops as well.
We later had a look at how snakes are processed in the lab when they're caught and the tools that are used, such as this device to implant pit tags. Here, snake biologist Kirsten Hales is painting a snake's rattle, a different color to indicate the year caught. The snakes have their heads in plastic tubes when they are processed, so they can't bite. It also keeps their bodies straight for when they are measured. Measuring a snake looks like a 2-person job. And then they are put in a sack and weighed, with the sack's weight subtracted. We asked Maida why, with so many kinds of snakes in the area, rattlesnakes are special.
For me, it's just my focus species and the species that I'm most concerned with. In turn, rattlesnakes, again, are those most maligned, misunderstood creatures that we have here in BC, compared to, say, a garter snake or a gopher snake as well. Rattlesnakes have been listed as threatened for quite a long period of time as well. And so with all those threats of development and, human persecution as well as being threatened, that's kind of why we focused our work on them.
This is Richard McGuire, digital editor with OsoyoosTimes.com.